Okay. Alright, this is going to be Interview with My Mother, Part 2. And we're going to be picking up with where we left off, which was the ending of your marriage to my dad. And so the first question I want to ask you then is, at the point that it was obvious that the marriage was coming to an end, how was that initiated? Did he come and tell you he wanted a divorce? That's what happened. So.
Yep. He said he didn't want to be married anymore, and so he went to his parents, and I went to my parents with my children, of course, and well, let's see. Seems to me I wasn't working at the time. Yeah. And they had just built some apartments down on South Washington and Bowen. They were brand new, and so I applied for those. And I got one cute little 2-bedroom apartment. And we moved in there, I think it was like January when we decided to split. And I think I got the apartment by probably the middle of March, 1st of March. It was pretty fast. Didn't have to stay with the folks very long. And we moved in there, and I went to work. I got offered a deal to train me as a nurse's aide at Bismarck Hospital. So I went to work there, and they trained me to be an aide, and I worked on the emergency room in the first floor there. And I'll never forget Chuck calling me the day before our anniversary on April 1st. It was our 6th anniversary on April Fool's Day, and he called me up and said, "How about we spend our anniversary together?" And I was just shocked. What? We're divorcing. But we did. We had a meal together. I think we spent the night together. And then we went our separate ways. And he told me at that time, "I wish I loved you."
Ouch.
Yeah. And so, anyway, I went to work at the hospital, and it seems to me, while you were 3 and Ricky was 5, seems to me Ricky was in kindergarten, and you probably went to Head Start, because I know I remember you running away from the place that you were at that one time, shortly after we moved in down there. And so I worked, and then I don't know how I did it. I don't remember having babysitters, but I must have hired babysitters, because I remember after work at the hospital going out to the Covered Wagon bar after work. And that's where I met Wayne. I think that was maybe 4 months after Chuck and I split. It was really quick. And I was working at the hospital and had a girlfriend from the same floor, and we would go out to the bar afterwards, and ran into him and started dating him. And I thought I was in love with him, but it ended up rocky, and it split up, of course. We ended up, Ricky told me he went to 5 schools that year. So he must have gone to school at that school on 23rd Street when we lived in that duplex on 23rd Street. And then we moved to Grandma's so I suppose he went to school over by her place. Then we moved to South Washington and Bowen, so he went to school down there. And then I think we went to Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wayne was working in Aberdeen, and he'd come home on weekends and see us. And he suggested that we rent a house in Aberdeen and that we all moved down there. And so, like an idiot, I let that nice, cute little apartment go, and I went with him. It's the worst thing I ever did, because he was an alcoholic and I didn't know it. And he would stay out nights and drink, and he was shouting and not very patient with you guys. And I think it lasted 2 or 3 months down there, and that was just before Christmas. And I called my friend Jean in California. Her and her husband were living in Escondido, and I said, I gotta get out of here, and I don't want to go back to Bismarck. And she said, well, get on a bus and come out here. You can stay with us and get a job out here. So that's exactly what I did. I must have had some money. I wasn't working down there, but I must have got a hold of some money somehow. Unless Jean sent it to me. I can't remember how I got a hold of the bus ticket money to go there. She might have sent it to me. I don't know. But, yeah, that was a terrible situation with him. So we moved to Escondido, California on the bus. And that was around just before Christmas time. And I remember Wayne calling me on the phone on New Year's Eve and drunker than a skunk. It was later in the night, about midnight, and crying his eyes out. And I couldn't hardly understand him, but it was not pretty. But next thing I know, after the first of the year, he writes me or calls me and says, I'm sending you the money to come home with the kids, and we'll get back together. He promised me that he loved me and that we would get back together, and that I was going to come home to Bismarck. And so, like an idiot, I listened to him and got on the bus and went home to Bismarck. And almost right after I got home, couldn't have been more than a week or two, he said, I, don't want to be with you anymore. And I could have swore my parents talked him into doing that just to get me home, and so I wouldn't be out in California with you guys. But he swears up and down that they didn't.
I was going to say, I think we probably flew back.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because I know we took a plane when I was a kid, and I think that's probably when it was.
Oh, somebody sent a lot of money then.
Because I remember going on a plane when I was little, and I remember going out there on the bus.
Yeah.
Because I remember
we had a layover in Vegas.
Yeah, I remember I'd been sleeping, and I remember waking up when we were in Vegas and asking where we were, and you told me we were in Las Vegas. So. But yeah, I'm pretty sure
we flew back.
We flew back, yeah.
I don't think we were in Escondido more than 3 months. Seems to me yeah, he swore up and down he loved me and that things would be different and everything, and that I was supposed to come home. And when I got together with him later on, years later, I asked him about that, and he said, no, your parents didn't put me up to that. I just thought, why in the world would you break up as soon as I got home then?
Yeah.
Didn't make any sense, but I don't know any better, so.
Yeah. Backtracking just a little bit, what kind of reaction did your parents have to the divorce?
I've thought about that many times, and I think it was just, they were just accepting. You know, they probably expected it because we were so young when we got married. They probably expected it, but I don't remember any trauma. I just remember, you know, Chuck doesn't want to be married anymore. I suppose I went to him and told him what was going on, and they probably said, okay, well, you can move in with us until you get settled, you know.
Yeah.
I don't remember a big hubbubaloo about it. So,
Yeah, the main reason I wondered about that, you know, just the Catholic family thing, you know, and how that divorce is a tough issue. But,
I know.
Yeah. And had there been, I know Rick, had he been divorced before you were divorced, or was yours the first one?
Kathy and I got divorced at the same time.
Oh, at the same time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, because when she found out he cheated on her, she started divorce proceedings, and that was right after Brian was born.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first 2 divorces in the family. But yeah, I'm sure they probably expected our marriage wouldn't last, being we were married so young. But
now, I want to talk a little bit about what prompted the departure for you from the Catholic Church. I mean, I know you've told me in the past that there was...
I was fine with the Catholic Church until I said, well, you know, someday I'll get remarried again, and I don't know if my mother mentioned it or what, but I checked into it, and they said, no, you can't receive the sacraments as long as you're divorced. And I said, well, he divorced me. They said, it doesn't matter. If you're divorced, you can't receive the sacraments. And I just said, my God wouldn't do that to me, and I walked away. And
so was that pretty shortly after the divorce, or was that...
I suppose when I was going with Wayne, I thought, you know, I'm going to want to get married again, and probably checked into it at that time.
Okay. All right.
I'm sure of that. I don't know why else I would be concerned about getting married. That, you know, when I think about being divorced less than a year and having my parents over at Christmas time and telling them we're engaged to be married, they must have thought I was out of my mind, because I was barely divorced. And I'm amazed. I mean, when I think about how my dad and I battled and battled and battled, we were just like oil and water. And some of the stuff I did, I can understand why he did. My mother was usually quiet about things, but not him.
All right. So anyway, we come back from California.
I think that's when Dad bought the trailer, didn't he?
Well, now I'm thinking about this because there was...
we went to live in those other low-rent apartments.
Yeah, the ones on the other side of the road.
Yeah, I remember that. I was so delighted because it was brand new. It was on the 2nd floor, I think. But it was full of Indians, and you guys kept coming in and saying the Indians are beating up on us. And so we didn't last there very long. I don't know if that's the reason I moved or what, but yeah, you guys were having a tough time getting along with the Indian kids.
So do you remember what you were doing after coming back from California, what you were doing for work?
I don't. I know I didn't go back to the hospital. I probably...
Did you waitress maybe? Or
maybe. I cannot. That's a total blank to me what I did when I came back from California. Because I know when Dad bought that trailer home on South 12th and we moved in there, I remember going from job to job to job. That might be, when I came back from California, I might have started I had sort of a string of working in bars.
Mm-hmm.
I went out to the Holiday Inn, worked in the dockside as a cocktail waitress, and I worked out at the Gaiety as a cocktail waitress, and I worked another place as a cocktail waitress, and then I went to the downtown and worked as a bartender, and I hated that. And then I tried driving taxi for a while, and I couldn't make any money at it. But I just went from job to job. I was miserable.
Now, I remember somewhere in there, I remember living in the other low-rent apartments, the gray ones on the other side of the road. But I also remember staying at Grandma and Grandpa's for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And you living down the road in some little basement apartment.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I was working into bars. That's right. We stayed with Grandma and Grandpa, and he said that I met this guy at this bar. He was like 15 years older than me. And he said, my parents have this house, and they have this little apartment in the basement. And he just wanted me at hand. So he offered me this little apartment. So I talked to his folks, and it was just big enough for me. It just had a roll-out couch and a kitchenette. I don't know why in the world I did that without getting a place with you guys. I can't remember why in the world I would just split us up like that.
Well, you weren't that far away, because I remember going out and walking down there and seeing you.
Yeah, so, it was over on Arikara or something, and just a few blocks from Mom and Dad's. But yeah, he was just always coming down there and trying to come on to me, and he was just an old man, and I didn't want anything to do with him. And that's the first time that I had a stroke. Because I remember I got attached to his daughter. They lived out in New Salem. I don't even remember his name anymore, but he had a daughter that was probably 15. And she would come to Grandma and Grandpa's, and she'd come down and see me, and I invited her for a chicken dinner one night. And she came over, and we were eating dinner together, and I totally lost my memory. For about 15 minutes, I just panicked, and I didn't know where I was at or anything. And she just sat me down on the couch and sat with me. And after about 15 minutes, it passed, and then I recognized where I was and so forth. But yeah, that was really frightening. But that was 75, probably 74. Yeah, Wayne left in 74, so it was probably shortly after that, in 74, that I lived there. And then I think that's when we went to the gray apartments, maybe.
Well, maybe. Yeah, I don't remember what the order of that was. But yeah, and then somewhere after that we got the trailer. So
and I was working in bars. Yeah, now I remember.
And I think we were in the trailer by the time I was 6, if I remember right. So I think I had my 6th birthday there.
1975.
Yeah,
I'm sure we were. Because we lived in the trailer, I think, about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, we lived there till 81 when we moved up to Jesus.
Right. Yeah. Not a very happy time in my life after Wayne left. I was rejected by 2 men. I was just not a very happy person.
Well, that's another thing. There was also, from my memory, there were several guys you dated during that time period. And
Yeah. Guys that I'd meet at the bars.
Yeah.
Not good.
There was an older guy, I forget his name, but I just remember he was fairly well-to-do. He used to take us out for dinner a lot, like to the Seven Seas and stuff like that. And yeah,
I don't remember that.
can't
person.
remember his name, but he, I think he wanted to marry you, but you said you didn't love him, so you wouldn't marry him.
How could I have forgotten about that? Wow.
But I mean, I don't know if Rick wanted it. I remember wanting you to marry this guy because he had money, and we were, of course, so poor at that time. And yeah, I can't think of the guy's name.
He was probably in his 50s or something, huh?
Well, to me, he was an older guy, but
Yeah.
I was pretty young, so.
I probably thought, I'm not going to marry an old man. Because I was only about 25 years old.
And then I remember you dating some other guy.
There's Tom from California. He was in the band at Doc's.
Yeah, I remember him. I liked him.
He was huge.
Yeah, he was a big guy. But he'd come over, and, I remember I liked him.
He was very sweet.
Yeah.
But I didn't love him.
Yeah. But then there was this other guy. Maybe his name was Ed.
Yes.
Was he kind of balding guy?
Yes.
Yeah. I just remember.
He worked at the power plant in Center.
I just remember Rick and I just hated that guy. And I remember one time he had his car parked in the driveway in the back of the trailer, and me and Rick went back there and put his car in neutral and pushed it out the driveway.
Really?
he came running out. He was so angry. Well, we wanted the guy to go away, It was,
he wasn't the nicest guy. I mean, he was nice to me, but no, he was not a good. No, he was just a iron worker. That's what he was. Up at the power plant. Yeah, and yeah, that was one of my worst ones.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing that I didn't marry anybody, because what I went through brought me to the point where I gave my life to the Lord.
One other thing I want to touch on, because it impacted my life specifically. You had a friend that came and lived with us for a while. Ardell, yeah.
Oh my God. I met her when I was in the apartments on Bowen. She had an apartment next to us, and she had a couple little boys, and she was a barfly, and oh my, such a bad influence. And she went through a tough time or something. She was dating a married man, and for some reason I let her move in the trailer. I don't know why.
And I just remember hating that woman so bad.
She was a terrible person.
She was so mean to me, and
was she?
Yeah, I just.
Well, I don't think I would have let her stay there if I'd known she was mean to you guys. But that was not a good thing, letting her stay there. I mean, she was just a barfly.
Yeah.
All she cared about was the next man she could find, and smoked and drank, and I don't know whatever possessed me. Maybe I had compassion on her or something.
Yeah.
But people come in your life and they go, thank God.
Yeah.
And you gain a little bit of wisdom each time, and what not to do the next time.
Yeah.
There were many times that we didn't have food in the cupboards. And I had to borrow a lot of money from Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
I think I always paid it back, but it was hard. And then I had 2 boys that talked me into writing bad checks.
Oh, I remember though, we had that down to a science. You know, I mean, we were like, well, how many days does it take for the check to clear the bank? You know, so we kind of figure that out, you know, before payday, you know, if we could go out and buy some stuff, because it would take a certain amount of time.
Yep.
But, okay, so there was that period of your life. So then you mentioned the point at which you became a Christian, so talk about that a little bit.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I was driving taxi, I think, was the last job I had. And all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, Pam Helfrey calls me and says, I am starting a daycare and a kindergarten on South 12th Street, just about where you're living, and we need a cook, and I would like you to do the cooking. Oh my God, I've never been so thrilled in all my life. I thought, she's offering me a job to cook. I thought that would be wonderful for little children. And I went over there and I saw the building, and it was wonderful. They had just had it built on South 12th Street, and one side was the kindergarten and one was the daycare, and I worked for her for 3 years. And that must have been 1976 or 7. I'm not sure which year it was.
I know you were working out there when Elvis died, because I remember walking out there to tell you that I heard on the news that Elvis died. So that was 77, so you were definitely up there by then.
I must have started in 77.
Yeah.
And while I was working there, I met a lot of nice girls that were working in the daycare. I worked in the kitchen. I cooked for the kids and made their snacks. And I loved that job because those little tiny kids would run in and give me big hugs for making good food. And I was just in my glory working there. And Pam and Vivian Schaefer owned it and managed it and taught there, and they were good. And anyway, I met all these girls, and one of them was Candy Reiser, and she told me about a church she was going to. I mean, I hadn't gone to church since, well, I had visited a few churches, Lutheran churches and stuff, and it was so hard to go from the pomp and circumstance of the Catholic Church into a Lutheran church, or even Lutheran, and it was so hard that I don't think we went to church for several years. I don't remember.
Well, I remember going to Trinity Lutheran.
Yeah.
We used to go. I remember going to Sunday school there and stuff. So
I don't
we must have
remember.
went at least once in a while. So
Once in a while, probably,
Yeah.
but the way I was living, I don't think I was too concerned about religion at that time. But anyway, Candy said that she was going to a church just up the hill from the trailer court in Michigan and 17th Street, Bismarck Reformed Church. And she said, I think you'd really like it. And I said, well, I'll come and visit on Sunday. And so I visited with her, and it was, the Lord just spoke to me, and I just ran to the altar when they had an altar call. I couldn't wait to get there. I had so many sins to be forgiven for. And I was so excited, and everybody was so friendly to me, and so I evidently didn't take you guys to church with me because you were there when I got home. I ran home and sat you down and told you what I'd been through and what I'd done, and I said, do you want to say the sinner's prayer and accept Jesus into your life? And Mike says, yeah. And Ricky says, no.
And not much has changed. Yeah.
So you were 6 and 8, or no, 8 and 10 at that time, weren't
Probably,
you?
yeah.
Yeah, because that was 77. I don't know if it was in September or what time of the year it was. I think it was in the fall, if I remember right.
Yeah.
But so I said the sinner's prayer with Mike, and it stuck.
Well, it had kind of a delayed effect. I didn't really get to live in it until I was in my mid-teens.
But I mean,
yeah.
we started going
yeah.
to church regular. I gave up smoking. I gave up drinking. I gave up men. I gave up everything, and I dove into that church. I got involved in the Christian singles group and had a blast, and I met wonderful people, and got involved in the evangelism group and went to church all the time. And it must have been quite a switch for you guys. All of a sudden.
Now, before we get too much further, because there's some things I want to address, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit again here. I want to get to the reactions that Rick and I had to the divorce from your perspective. How do you feel Rick handled it?
Stoically, he didn't say much. Where you acted out and ran away and did different things, where I don't remember Rick expressing as a 5-year-old missing dad or anything like that.
Okay.
Of course, I may not remember. I don't know.
So now you mentioned my running away. Tell a little bit about what you remember.
Well, the first time was you were outside riding your trike. Ricky was out there too, I'm sure. I don't know what I was doing, but I couldn't find you. And I don't know what Rick said about where you were, or if you just disappeared, but you were gone. And I panicked, and I started searching everywhere and calling everywhere, and finally I called Chuck. I said, could he possibly be over there? I had no idea how you'd get there. Nope, he's not here. I can't imagine how I panicked. And then I don't know how long it was, if it was an hour or what, but Chuck finally called back and said, yeah, I just wanted to see what you'd do. He's here. Showed up on my front door step. So angry. I went over there and got you, and I remember standing out there arguing with him, and I really told him what I thought about his mean trick. But anyway.
Yeah. And that was actually Grandma and Grandpa Tiff's house that I went to, yeah.
Because he was living there.
Yeah, so, I, remember bits and pieces of that, not a whole lot. I remember...
you said you were going to look for your dad.
Well, I remember meeting somebody down by the ball field, which wasn't too far away.
You said it was an angel.
Well, I've speculated on that, but, it's... because I don't know who it was, and I was 3 years old, and I'm not really sure how I could have told whoever I ran into where I needed to go. And I don't remember being taken anywhere. I remember meeting up with this person, and I remember showing up on my grandparents' doorstep and knocking on the door, and them bringing me inside, and Grandpa giving me some green beans to eat.
Not candy?
No. They'd had green beans, so he gave me some green beans to eat. And that's about all I remember about that. So, but it's just always been something that was amazing to me how I managed to get there
And me.
at 3 years old. Yeah, so,
Everybody couldn't figure it out.
But that's the first time, and then there's a second time.
That you were at the Head Start at the Christ the King Church or something. I can't remember. It's still there over on 4th.
Up by the Capitol, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were there, and they called me and said that you had disappeared and you were gone. So we searched for you, and you ended up riding your trike all the way home.
Yeah.
How you knew how to get home, I have no idea.
And crossed a lot of busy streets, and I don't know. That's again, I don't know how I did that.
That's the busiest part of town, going from that area down to where we lived.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom.
Yeah. But anyway, back on Rick. Now you said his reaction was stoic, but over time he developed some anger issues.
Obviously.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you remember, how that came about, or do you remember, or when you noticed it was an issue? Or...
I don't know. You're his brother. You're the one he beat up on. You must have noticed when his anger more than me.
Yeah, but there was a point. I mean, because later on, and we'll get to that, but later on, you ended up sending him to go live with David
he was 13, and
yeah.
he was lying.
Yeah.
And I reacted the same way to lying as my dad did. Beat him up.
Yeah. Because that's what I remember. I remember you and Rick getting into physical fights.
Yes.
Before he
And when I remembered what Dad did to me, and I saw that, I said, I ain't doing this to my kid. No way. So I called David. Said, can you come and get him? He needs a man in his life. I can't do this. And he did.
Okay. All right. So then, okay, back to after you became a Christian and attended the Reformed Church there for a while. And you mentioned that you got involved with the Christian Singles Group. I remember that the Reformed Church was pretty good to us. I remember them bringing us groceries.
Well, that's it. The cupboards were bare. Yeah. And I'll never forget that one time. It was couldn't have been more than weeks after I had given my life to the Lord. The cupboards were bare. I think we had a pack of macaroni in the cupboard or something, and I hadn't told a soul, and we were probably talking about calling the folks for money again, and Pastor D. Cook came to the door with groceries and a check, and I was blown away. I couldn't figure out how he knew that we needed food.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was just a beginning of my spiritual life. I didn't realize how God could take care of you.
Yeah. Okay, so...
And then I had that Volkswagen, and Randy Robertson had a yellow Charger. He was a guy from church that was in the singles group. And I was having troubles with the Volkswagen. It wasn't going to last. Besides, the three of us were pretty big, fitting in that little Volkswagen. It was getting kind of small. And he said to me one day, I need a fishing car. How about if you want to trade cars? I thought, man, I couldn't believe it. He just traded cars. We had a nice car, yellow Charger, Dodge Charger.
Now, I think that actually happened after we came back from Montana. So, because we had the Volkswagen when we were out in Montana.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So,
Okay. I went to school. I got an opportunity. I think it was the job at the daycare only lasted 3 years. And trying to remember what happened. Why it didn't last any longer. Something must have happened. Maybe they decided to sell it or something. Can't remember what happened to the daycare, but I was out of a job after 3 years, and so I decided to go to school to be a ward secretary in the hospital. I heard about a program where you go all the way to Montana to this godforsaken place out in the middle of the prairie and go to school for 6 months and have your own little house and so I took him up on it and we moved out there, and that was
79.
1979. Yeah.
And we went to Glasgow, Montana, up in the
Right.
northeast corner of Montana there. And there was an Air Force base where the school program was at.
Oh, that right. It was an
old
Air Force base.
Yeah.
That's right. I'd forgotten that.
And so we lived there for a while.
You guys
Yeah.
went to school.
Yeah.
Well, I went to school too, but we were always short of money. It seemed like I was calling the folks for money there too.
Yeah. Oh, I remember one time they had, as part of the program, you could get like some emergency help, you know, if you were out of food or whatever.
Oh.
And we were, so you decided to, you know, take advantage of that. And I remember they actually had to send people out to our house and inspect our cupboards to make sure we really were out of food before they give it to us.
Amazing what you go through when you're poor, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but yeah, and I remember we actually lived in 2 different houses while we were there, because we initially, when we first went out there, we lived on one section of the Air Force Base in just a 1-story like ranch style house, and then after a while they decided to shift the people who were part of this program to a different section of the base, so they had us move over to a different style house. These were like
2-story?
2-story houses, yeah.
Oh.
And so
I
we
just
lived over there
remember
for a
the
while.
first one, though.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
And so and then we you know, there were friends that I remember from both parts. You had a girlfriend that lived around the corner at the first one, and I think she had a little boy. I think she was a Native American lady, and she had a little boy, and I remember watching him sometimes.
Was his name Royce?
Yeah, Royce.
I don't remember her name, though.
Yeah, I don't remember her name either.
But that name just came to my mind.
And
then I met, what was her name? Debbie or Tammy or... She was from Belgrade, Montana. She was a big girl with dark brown hair, long, and she had a little blonde girl.
Was that the lady who always had like multicolored hair? I mean, I just remember this lady you had that was a friend that, and I think it was out there, and she was dyeing her hair all the time. And
she might have. I don't remember that, but she
I don't
might have. She was kind of a hippie type.
Okay.
Her and her husband.
Anyway.
But I remember going out to Belgrade at one time and visiting her, and we went tubing down the river together, and oh my, we had a good time. I kept in touch with her for a while.
I remember when we lived in the first house out there. I remember Rick getting a BB gun and us playing outside and him shooting me with a BB gun.
Oh my gosh! I actually bought him a BB gun.
I don't remember if you bought it for him or how he got it. I assume you bought it for him, but I just remember being outside and starting to feel these stings on my legs, and Rick's out there shooting me with the BB gun.
How long did that last? Did it get taken away? What happened to it?
I don't remember.
Rick probably remembers. But then we decided we wanted to go out to Glacier National Park and see it.
Trip out there, yeah.
We didn't have any money, but we decided to drive out and camp in the tent in Glacier National Park.
Yeah.
Never seen any place so beautiful in my life.
Yeah.
And I think we called the folks for money.
Yeah, you did. We got, I don't remember where we were at, but you called Grandma and asked her to send some money because we were out of money. And you had a gas card, so you were charging all the gas on this gas card. And I think we could buy like a few snacks at the gas stations and stuff too. And I remember having a little cooler with us. And somewhere along the way, we had a little bit of money, and somewhere along the way, we had bought a pound of hamburger. And when we got to a campsite, we were going to cook up this hamburger and have burgers. But that thing sat, the thing sat in the cooler, ran out of ice.
Oh,
and
no.
it sat in there for so long that by the time we looked at it, all the blood or whatever drained out of it. It was gray. We're like, okay, I guess we're not eating that.
That sounds terrible. It's amazing we survived.
And I remember, you know, we're trying to stretch the gas too. So I remember whenever we were on a hill, we'd coast down the hill trying to save gas.
Sounds like somebody else's life. I don't remember those small things.
Yeah. Well, and I had an experience while we were camping that you don't remember. You've told me you don't remember, and Rick tells me he doesn't remember. But it stands out to me. I remember pulling into this campground at night, you know, and we couldn't really see much. We knew we were at a campground, and we drove around the road and found a place between some trees to set up our tent. And, you know, so we set up the tent and went to bed and got up the next morning, and I remember just a little ways away from where we set up our tent, there being this big drop-off and this big scenic mountain scene there. And
I know, I told Ricky about that, and he said no. But after you told me about it, the memory came back. I can remember that. But he doesn't seem to think it happened.
He doesn't remember it, I know.
But anyway, the good Lord was watching out for us.
So yeah, we were out there for a while, and we had dogs before we left. Benji and Pepper. We had a couple dogs.
Yeah.
We left them with Grandma and Grandpa. They said they'd take care of them while we were gone. And shortly after we left, Grandpa put them up for giveaway, and so
Did he really?
Yeah, so they were gone, and he found out over the phone from Grandma that he'd done that, and I remember just getting so mad that he'd given away our dogs, and I remember I sat down and I wrote him a letter, and I just...
Did you mail it?
Oh yeah, Grandma saved it too. I remember.
Did she?
Yeah, I remember. You know, years later, her bringing the letter out and showing it to me. That I'd sent
Oh
Grandpa.
my goodness.
Yeah, I was really upset.
Well, anybody would be.
And I don't know whatever happened to the letter after she died, but I know she had it for a long time.
Huh. Well, I never found it among her things. But, yeah, I didn't remember that at all.
Yeah.
I knew we had dogs when we left the trailer, but I didn't remember where they went.
Well, like I say, because we left the trailer the first time to go out to Montana, but then we came back from Montana after schooling was done and went back to the trailer because Grandpa maintained it while we were gone. And so we moved back to the trailer.
And I went to work at Bismarck Hospital.
Yeah, you went to work at the hospital. And
board secretary.
And the only animal we had through all of that I can remember, well, we had the cat Mittens, the calico cat, and I don't know if she was still around after we came back from Montana or not, but we always had cats too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and
Kittens.
yeah. But after we came back from Montana, that's when we got Coco, and so we had a dog again.